Finding an exponential formula. Let's look at an example. Find a formula for the exponential function passing through the points -1, 5/4 and 3, 320. So what's our situation? We're given 2 points in the xy coordinate system. One is at -1, 5/4. The other one is at 3, 320. So this is not quite to scale because 320 is so high up. And we're being asked to find an exponential function that passes through these 2 points. So it's probably going to look something like this. And we want to find an equation for that function. Now we know exponential functions have general form y equals a times b to the x. And this is going to be very useful for us. Why? Because we can take our 2 points and we can plug them into this formula. And then we can figure out what does a have to be and what does b have to be in order for this exponential function here to pass through this point and this point. So this equation I wrote here is just general exponential function equation. And we know that this point, -1, 5/4, and the point 3, 320 have to satisfy this equation. What we need to know is what is little a and what's little b. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in each point. So I'm going to plug in -1, 5/4 and 3, 320 into our general equation. What I mean by that is I'll substitute for y, 5/4, and for x, -1. I'm going to take the same general equation over here, and I'm going to substitute in for the output, 320, and for the input, 3. That's our x value. So I do this for both points. Now, why is this useful? Because at this point, we have a system of 2 equations and 2 unknowns. So what I mean by that is we have one equation with 2 unknowns, a and b, and then we have another equation with 2 unknowns, a and b. And when you have a system of 2 equations with 2 unknowns, you can solve for the unknowns. So we can actually solve for these a's and the a and the b. So how am I going to do that? I'll take the equation on the left and rewrite it a little bit. So b to the -1 is the same as 1 over b. Now, if I multiply both sides of that by b, so I multiply this side by b and this side by b, I'll have solved for a. So I got a is equal to 5/4 times b. Now, it's very handy to know that a is 5/4 times b, because what I can do is I can take this and plug it in for the a in my other equation. So if I plug it into the a for my other equation, I end up getting 320 equals 5/4 times b to the 3. In other words, if I solve for a in my left-hand equation and then plug it into the right-hand equation, I get a new equation that only has b in it. Just b, and that's it. Now, why do we care about having an equation with just b in it? Because we can actually solve for that b if it only has a single variable in it. How do we solve for it? I'll multiply both sides by 4/5 to get 1280/5 equals b to the 4th. Multiplying both sides by 4/5 makes it so that these 2 5s cancel and then the 2 4s cancel. So we just get b to the 4 on the right. And then if I simplify this a little bit, I get b to the 4 is equal to 256. Now, how do I solve for b here? I can take the 4th root of both sides. So if I take the 4th root of b to the 4, the 4th root of 256, you can do this on your calculator by raising 256 to the 1/4 power, then we're going to get b is equal to 4. So we can solve for b. Now, we know our general equation for an exponential function is of the form y equals a times b to the x. We've just figured out what b has to be in order for the exponential function to pass through these 2 points. All that's left is figuring out what a has to be. So we need to also know what a has to be. How do we do that? We can go back to one of these 2 equations and substitute in b equals 4. So I'm going to take this right here. We know a is equal to 5/4 times b. So we know a equals 5/4 times b. So if I plug in b equals 4, we'll know what a is equal to. Those 4's cancel and we'll get a equals 5. So now we have b has to be 4 and a has to be 5 in order for our exponential function to pass through the 2 points given. In other words, if y is equal to a times b to the x, we want to have a equal to 5 and b equal to 4. And this exponential function here passes through the 2 points that we were given in the beginning.